Thanks for tuning into the Urban Scope podcast, and I'm back with another Inside the Scope edition. Today, I will be putting Inside the Scope Ludacris. Now, the Atlanta-based rapper is one of the most energetic and articulate rappers that has ever, graced the microphone. So, when you think about rappers, and you think about, and then R&B singers as well, probably more specifically R&B singers or just singers in general, there's a lot of ambiguity about what a lyric is or what someone said in a particular word or a particular phrase. But when it comes to Ludacris, you never had that problem because he had that clear cut clarity sound. That was a tongue twister, but he had few or if any lyrics that had any discrepancies in them. He always projected very well, and it always seemed like he was ahead of the game as far as sound goes. Now, I don't know who his engineer was or who his, he had different producers, of course, but it's interesting to see if he had the same engineer or different ones because his sound was always high quality. Sound like he had 4K sound back, back in the late 90s and early 2000s before it was even a thing. But he was one of those few rappers that was able to give us clear sound like that, and you were always able to know what he was saying. A lot of lyrics, especially when it comes to singers, you really have to read the lyrics because you get caught up in singing it and different things like that. So you don't really pay attention to the lyrics. And like I said, there's a lot of ambiguity with these songs. I remember one of the biggest ones is Lloyd, when he says, is either she's fine too or she's 5'2". And then recently Usher had a nice and slow lyric where he's talking about there was some ambiguity with that lyric as well. So there's a lot of different things that Ludacris bring to the table, but that clear cut sound was the major one. But also that energy. He gave you the energy of like a Eminem or a Busta Rhymes or Missy Elliott, and his videos were pretty much the same as well. He had especially like the Saturday Oops song, which I'm not a huge fan of, but the video, he was always masterful and putting his videos together, and he was always creative with things, and it made sense why he transitioned to doing movies, the Fast and Furious series of movies, because he had so much creativity and he was ahead of his time as far as music goes, and no one actually encapsulates that type of creativity in music videos. And music videos are pretty much obsolete now, but he was one of the first ones to do that, other than, of course, the Busta Rhymes and Missy Elliott, who were very creative and put a lot of thought into their videos, or at least had people to do that. But they were very animated in the way they came across, and Ludacris was one of the most animated rappers ever to do it. And his anthems of stand up and move, get out the way. He had high, these high energy songs that it gave you the feel of a rock song, but they were hip hop, and it was uniquely, done, you know, since Run DMC was able to do it back in the day with the rock groups that he did it with, but he created a sound, and I believe he made way for artists to experiment with things like that, like a Kid Cudi or like a Kanye West. Those artists being able to go into different ventures and be themselves and not feel like you have to be boxed in, because he never felt like he was trying to box himself in or had to dumb himself down. He was very articulate and intelligent, and also he was able to still convey some street stuff as well. Just just letting you know that he was going to be himself. Now, his classic albums, Chicken and Beer and Word of Mouth. Now, these albums were his best works, I want to say, and these around the same time. I think it was '03 and '01, I believe. Now, these albums had a lot of classic songs. Like I said, he had a lot of experimentation. He had funny skits with Faison Love, and he had skits with just different people that was random, but he always had classic hits and he was funny inside of his raps as well. So he just didn't tell a story, but he told it from his perspective that was pretty funny, and was able to add a twist to it. So later on, when he came out, One More Drink with T Pain, the video was classic as well. It had a lot of energy, a lot of creativity to it, but he was able to spread his message while being loud at the same time. So it was kind of like a DMX, so to speak, but on a down south version. But he was so different just because it's difficult to be lyrical, entertaining, and funny, and he was doing all three, which is, like I said, is very difficult to do consistently, to do those three different things. Now, other artists that can do that, of course, the Eminem can do that, a Snoop Dogg, The Game, Lil Wayne, they can do things, they can can do that on a consistent level. But Ludacris back in the late '90s, early 2000s, he was untouchable. He was one of the top five back then. You had the Jay Z's, you had the Eminem, you had the Nas's, you had Nelly, and then you had to throw Ludacris in there. He was one of the top five back in that time period. Uh, they couldn't make a a dud song or a bad song back then. It was just impossible for them to do that, even their B sides. But he also made mellow songs too, so he did. He was versatile as well in some ways. When he made songs like Splash Waterfalls, which it has singing on it and it's kind of upbeat, but he was able to give a different perspective, talking about giving the woman something to listen to. It just wasn't always about what the men. And he had songs like "Hoes in My Room" with Snoop Dogg, which he was dissing Bill O'Reilly and just talking about women as well. That was kind of his version of "Girls, Girls, Girls" that Jay Z did. And then, of course, one of my favorite songs he did was "Hard Times," which he had A-Ball and MJG, and I forgot the other singer that was on it, but it was a very good song as well. So he was able to slow it down and not just always pick it up, but he was known for those anthem songs that he had, like I said, Stand Up and Move, Get Out the Way, um, Area Codes with Nate Dogg, rest in peace. He could, you give him a great singer like a Bobby Valentino, and he making a pimping all over the world, or 2 miles per hour. He can give you so many different looks as far as hip hop goes. And I do believe, in the 2000s, he had the radio on a frenzy. But I do believe if he never went transition to, working on acting full time and being a businessman full time, I believe he would have been more respected in hip hop. He's underrated in hip hop. I believe he's left out a lot of discussions because he left the game and and went to do other things. A lot of hip hop artists are like that, unless you put out, 6, 7 classic albums before you left, which I believe he has at least two or three classics. Um, but when he left the game, he had so much more he left on the table that when he left, a lot of people forgot about him. And now we're in a new generation now. A lot of the younger kids are not familiar with his artistry. They're probably familiar with his songs, but not what he meant to the game and his impact and how important he was. Especially, coming out of the state of Georgia, when at the time Georgia wasn't on the scene as much as it is now. It was starting to make waves with Jermaine Dupri and So Def and Outkast and others, but they were starting to ascend. But now they have already reached the top. But back when he was doing it, he was one of the first to help make that push, and he doesn't get enough credit for that. But kudos to Ludacris, one of the best rappers of my time growing up. And as always, until next time, I'll see you next time.